What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Phightin Words. Anthony SanFilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel. Monday morning, Phillies take 2 out of 3 against the Atlanta Braves. An offensive explosion on Friday night, backed up by more of the same offensively. But Anthony, it's the same old story with this Phillies team, man. The starting pitching is it's preposterously good. And it carried them this weekend. Certainly in the finale yesterday, Ranger Suarez is phenomenal. And what could have been a disastrous road trip, I say that with some exaggeration, but what would have been a pretty messy, depressing road trip finishes on a pretty positive note here now. And it takes us into another big week back at home, fireworks games, Padres are here, an NL contender. And I guess let's just jump into what we saw this past week in Houston and in Atlanta. I know we did the show last Friday, but let's put it all together now.
Yeah. So Bob, I had somebody reach out to me who's a fan of the show and says, you know what I really like? I really like when you guys come up with like really creative titles for your show. I think that they're really funny. They're really entertaining. Well, thanks. Either you or I usually come up with the title. And the one I came up with for today was Failing Upward, because I really think that's what the Phillies did this week. Starting pitching aside, they were great. I'm not going to include them. They get a pass from the idea of failure, right? But this Phillies team, and you put a tweet out, which was great, that in 5 games out of 6, they didn't hit at all. And yet they come into this series with the Padres further ahead in the National League East than they were when they started the trip a week ago. That's almost impossible to do.
If you just table everything that you watched this week, most of which was not good beyond the starting pitching, and I were to just say to you, listen, last Monday morning, 2 out of 3 against the Mets, you're in first place. I said they got to go to Houston, who's playing great baseball right now, and then they got to go down to the Braves, who have surged a little bit, kind of clawing their way back in, and they're going to come home a week from now in better position in the National League East. You sign up for that all day, right?
Right.
All day you take that. I mean, to gain ground over the past week is huge for this team. But, I mean, you'd be kidding yourself if we sat here this morning and we talked about how it's all good and Harper's coming back and it's all going to be fixed. Here's where I think we have to start, okay? You go into Fangraphs this morning, and you look at wins above replacement for starting staffs in baseball. And this has just reached levels of it's like it's hard to wrap your mind around how much better this rotation has been than all other rotations. They have 10.9 wins above replacement right now at Fangraphs. The next best team is the Royals at 8.3.
Yeah.
And I actually invite you to go on and do the search, because if you look at teams 2 through 10, it's all a jumbled mess. They're all separated by 1, and then here's the Phillies head and shoulders above all of these other teams. They're first in innings pitched. They're first in strikeouts per 9. They're third in ERA by 1/10 of a run. They're first in the National League in ERA, starter ERA. They're first in strikeout to walk ratio, fielding independent pitching. It's been electric to watch this. This might be, if they can finish it, finish the regular season, this might be the best Philly starting staff I've ever seen. And I know all about 2011. I was there every day for that. But I think this staff is starting to push it now.
Yeah. And what's fascinating, Bob, is, when you look at how it's being done without Aaron Nola at all, right? I mean, you think about that for a second. If you would have said that the Phillies would have been putting up these astronomical numbers back in spring training, you would have at least assumed that Nola was having a good year as part of it. And he had a terrible start, and then he's been injured for 2 months, right? So that's part of it. That's what makes it even that much more impressive. They've had to deal it with basically a rotating cast of characters again in the number 5 spot. And yet it's still happening. I don't know. I look at it and say that this is probably it's either this group or 2011. I mean, if you go line by line and compare them, I probably still take the overall.
When you
2011,
dig into the names, you're like Holiday Lee, Holiday Lee. You don't have, but Wheeler. look, I didn't research it. I didn't do the side-by-side comparison. I didn't take Halliday's best year here with the Phillies and put it up against Wheeler's. For my money, I've reached a point, though, now, and I'm on a generational run with the mushing and the hexing of guys. But for my money, Zach Wheeler is the, at least since 2000, where I can speak about it as somebody that observes it day in, day out, and really knows it. I think Zach Wheeler is the best Phillies pitcher I've seen. I know Halladay at his absolute apex, at his peak is incredible, but it was just not long enough. I mean, you factor in the duration element and how good Wheeler's been and the numbers stack up and how good he's been in the postseason. And I think we're going to look back in 30, 40 years and say, that guy was incredible. Like, he will be the standard to which future Phillies are compared.
Yeah. No, there's no question about it. There's no question about it. He's not Halladay, but you're right. He'll have more sustained time with the Phillies than Halladay did, and it will be, as consistently good over that time. And Halladay's tenure was really short in comparison. So I think that you're right about that in the long run. And look, they need it, Bob. I mean, just imagine if the starting pitching wasn't lights out right now. Let's imagine starting pitching was good, but rest of the league kind of good, right? You're saying,
they'd be 3 games over 500 right now. They'd be fighting for their lives in terms of a wild card spot. And
yes,
not only that, what is kind of scary, I don't, now that I've just gushed over the starting rotation, you start to look at the NL playoff picture, and we're reaching a point where earlier in the year I said, they don't need to win the division. It's not immensely important that they win the division. We know that it won't really set them up for success necessarily getting in October unless you have the bye. That's a little bit of a different story. I mean, I know it hasn't worked out for some teams recently, but I would take the bye all day. You look at the National League postseason picture right now, and it's not like, we're in first place and we're dusting all of these other wild card contenders. I mean, it's like a 2.5 game separation. Like they're in a race. Like, it's going to come to a point where winning the division will be your easiest path and probably your most convenient path to make the postseason.
Not only that, it probably, if you're looking at how things may play out, it probably gives you your better matchups in a division series. I mean, if we're being honest, right, you'd probably rather face the winner of the Central or the number 6 wild card team than you would the runner-up out west versus the Mets in the division series, right? I mean, like, if you're being honest, if you really are, and that, so you want to be the 2 seed is really important. The 2 seed is really important if you can try and get that spot. That's a key spot this year, and the Phillies should be shooting for it. But we got to talk, Bob. And look, we could sit here and gush about the starting pitching all we want. This show has been the starting pitching podcast for a long, long time. We've talked about why we have been bullish on the Phillies for the better part of 3.5 years. Is because of the starting pitching that they've always seemed to have. So naturally, we're going to be supportive of that. But we got to look at what is a major frigging problem right now, and it's this lineup. And we got to tackle these individual players, because I want to bring up a couple comments, because I think that these are things worth talking about and things worth getting into. But this is one. First, let's bring up Chris's. Chris's comment says, the puff piece in the Inquirer on Crawford, Justin Crawford, makes it appear that the call-up is likely within weeks. Is that a correct assessment to have? And I follow that up with this one from Tyler DeMuro saying, manifesting this announcement today. Harper off the IL, Crawford call-up, and Kepler DFA. I don't think that the DFA is coming today, because I think Buddy Kennedy is the odd man out here when Harper comes back. But I do think you're getting close to the Kepler DFA possibility. But let's discuss this, because really the issues right now are Max Kepler and the bullpen, are the major issues right now. But it goes further than that too. Like, we could look at other players in this lineup who have not looked good. JT Realmuto looked terrible. Alec Boehm had a bad week. Castellanos had a bad week. And I know guys are going to go through ups and downs. That's part of baseball. But It's just too consistent. And we talked about it Friday with the Houston, how they kept throwing lefties at you. Now it's even worse. Their chase rate is getting worse. They're now down to 22nd in baseball. They have nobody on the bench that they can really, really rely on. Like, there are so many holes right now in this offense that even Bryce Harper coming back, while it'll help, is not going to make it a good offense. It's going to be a mediocre at best, and I'm being polite with that offense.
Well, you look at the month of June specifically here, and much of it has been played without Bryce Harper, and I acknowledge that. We talk about the Phillies' overall season statistics, and you look at on-base percentage, it's still top 10. You look at batting average, I think they're 7th or 8th. It's been a functional offense. Even runs per game, they're hovering around 10th. I think they came into the weekend 11th. They had the big night Friday. That probably pumped up the numbers a little bit. I didn't look this morning. But if you look at where they're at in the month of June, I'll start with, I guess, the positive. They have a 248 team batting average. And you go like, okay, like that's not terrible. It's 12th in baseball this month. But where I start to look at it and go like, man, this is scary, is like you get into like the OPS. They have their OPS right now this month is 704. It's 20th in baseball. Their slug this month, 388, is 20th in baseball. And I can go and read the numbers that they produced over, the past 6 games, and it's 0 and it's 0 and it's a 1 and a 13 and a 1 and a 2, and we see this lineup and you see the deficiencies within the lineup. The numbers are trending in a negative direction. Like, it's not fair now to say, oh, look, they're still top 10 this, top 10 that. They're sliding. They're going in the wrong way. And my question to you is, yes, Bryce Harper comes back. If he is Bryce Harper, the guy that you count on, the guy that you expect him to be, the guy that we've seen here over the last 6 years, is that enough? I mean, it doesn't fix everything, but is it enough? That's my question, because I think that's where you're hoping at right now. Like, he comes back, he feels 100%, and he's more than what he was at the start of the season. And if he's not, and he's just that same guy that we saw in April and May, what can be done to fix it? And will they fix it? Like, that's what this is about. Like, it's impossible to do a Phillies show. It's impossible to talk about them after getting swept or winning 2 out of 3, whatever it may be, without being like, there's 31 more days for them to fix this. Can they fix it?
Yeah. Well, Bob, I still go back to listening to Dombrowski on Jason Stark and Doug Glanville's podcast, and it perplexes me even more, right? Like, it bothers me even more after this past week. Like, how can you look at this lineup and say, yeah, we don't really need much here. Maybe a fringe, 4th guy, 4th outfielder type, bench bat type, and look at the rest of it and go, yeah, they're going to be fine. They're not. This offense now, and remember, I'll take you back. Like, a year ago, I defended this offense at this time, saying, yeah, I know that there's some inconsistency, but as long as they all don't go cold together with the good pitching, they should still be fine. And then, of course, they burned that comment. It was a bad take by me. They got cold altogether in October and were eliminated in 4 games. This is a year later, and this offense is not as good as it was a year ago. Yeah. It's just not, right? And so if you've had that depreciation from last year, how you can sit here today on June 30th and go, yeah, we're still good enough. We only need and I understand sometimes you have to say things a certain way because maybe the talent that you need is just not going to be made available at the deadline. Maybe teams aren't going to throw big names out there that are going to help this team. You just say, oh, go out and get this guy. Well, you don't know that guy's going to be available, or you don't know what the cost is for a certain player, whatever. Maybe not. And so maybe Dombrowski's tempering expectations a little bit. Sometimes I understand you have to do that, but to sit there and say that you think what you have currently is fine, that's where I'm like, are we watching the same thing? I don't know. That's where I get annoyed.
Well, you would agree that the Pirates have maybe one of the most feeble offenses in all of baseball, correct? Like,
they do, and I wish they were in the National League East, because they're 15-11 against the National League East, and I think 19-30 against the rest of baseball. So they'd be a contender in the National League East. Be fun.
The Phillies have scored in 26 games, which is exactly the same amount of games that the Pirates have played. They have scored the same amount of runs in the month of June, which is 107. They also have the exact same batting average, which is 248. The Phillies are the Pirates offensively right now and have been for a month. And if I were to tell you that the Phillies have been offensively the Pirates for a month, you would have to probably say that that's not good enough to make a postseason run. I think there's a thing that happens in this city sometimes where we all sort of see the same thing and it turns into an echo chamber. And a lot of times, like, the narratives end up being wrong and they get dispelled. And there's like a little bit of like I don't know. It's like it gains momentum. Certain ideas, certain takes gain momentum. Like Sirianni's a bozo. He can never win a Super Bowl. Like, everyone was wrong. He won a Super Bowl. And you can talk about whether or not it was really him or he got carried there, however you want to spin it, right? Fine. But like, I think everybody is watching the exact same thing right now, and it's hard to have a unique take. It's hard to have a unique take about the Phillies because we all see and we all know the same thing. And they are good. They're going to win. I would bet right now that they will win. I'd be willing to go even money wager that they will win at least 91 games, which makes you
I think it's more than that, Bob.
I do too.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think it's what I said at the beginning, which is 93. I'm going to stick right on that. And I would bet on that. I would not bet that this team makes a championship series. I don't think that they will, as constructed. And maybe it's a little bit of like a PTSD after the way things played out against the Mets last year, where you got good starting pitching and you still weren't able to really compete. Maybe I think all of us to some degree are over analyzing that particular series and saying, well, just because it happened that one time doesn't mean that starting pitching can't carry you through a postseason. But this offense is so wretched and so filled with holes and inconsistencies that it's just hard to wrap your mind around getting through multiple series, especially against elite pitching. And in a way, I'm a little bit annoyed that Friday night happened because Bryce Elder is cooked. Like, I know you were down Atlantic City doing the Flyer stuff on Friday night. And so you probably were not too attentive toward the game.
I was tracking it on my phone, but Anthony, I mean, every time I looked, it was like more runs were getting added.
Elder's pitches, his stuff looked like it was dying at the plate. I mean, you watch a guy and like just independent of result and you go, I don't understand how this guy's getting outs. You remember when I used to say that like last year when Taijuan Walker was at his worst, it was like, it's like when he gets outs, they happen by accident. That's what it looked like on Friday night. Elder was that bad. And credit to them for going out there and beating the brakes off of him. But in a way, it's like, what are you talking about? We scored 16 runs over the weekend against the Braves. You know, we averaged 5 runs per game and we hit 4 home runs on Friday, and that stood up for the weekend. And so like that's where the stats get a little bit hazy, you know, a little bit. They don't tell the full story. This offense stinks right now, and the 13 runs against the Braves on Friday night doesn't change it.
No, you're right. You're right. And so what needs to change? So let's look at that. Let's dissect it a little bit. Let's start with Kepler, because we talked about him on Friday when he was complaining about not playing. Then he doubles down on this in Atlanta, right? Doubles down on it, and I would think that you would think somebody would get in his ear a little bit and be like, dude, look at what you're doing. This isn't the right way to approach this, right? Like you would think his agent, somebody would say to him,
or the handful of veteran guys that are in that clubhouse. Like I would have to think that a Kyle Schwarber or a Bryce Harper or even a Nick Castellanos, who just had his own dust up or displeasure made public with the manager. If I were those guys, I'd be like, dude, what are you talking about? You just got here. You're on a 1-year deal. You're Max Kepler. You don't get to say that. You do not get to think that.
Yeah. Thanks to David for this. Last 11 games batting 175. Yeah, he's not been good.
Well, and that's what's really interesting about it. The whole thing for him is like, I want consistent at bats. Go back over the last 4 games now. He's playing every day. He's
had consistent at bats all year. So to make it sound like that's the thing that burned me the most, because Right now, he's a qualified hitter in Major League Baseball. If he was having a career year and was in the batting title race, he'd be qualified. So to me, that's a starting player. Is he starting every day? No. I think he's sat 13 times.
So let's look at this. Let's do a quick look at this. Okay. Let's go back to, let me make sure. I don't have by start here, but I'm going to say, did he get multiple at bats in a game? And go back to June 10th, which was against the Cubs. It was the second game of the Cubs series. The 10th, yes. The 11th, yes. The 13th, they were off that Thursday. Yes. 14th, yes. 15th, yes. 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st. Yes, it's an entire week straight where he had at least 3 at-bats. And then I can see, and it's interesting that the comments come out when they do. He plays the 21st, the Saturday night game against the Mets, goes 0 for 4, by the way, and then doesn't play again until Thursday. So he doesn't play the first 2 games of the Houston series. And I can appreciate watching, if you're a veteran guy and you're like, Otto Kemp and Buddy Kennedy, and like Buddy Kennedy's getting at bats over me, like, well, come on, man. Like, I can appreciate that to a degree, but given the consistency with which he's played, this one stretch is really the only time that they sat him down for a prolonged period. Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He didn't play 3 straight games. So he's pissed, right? The fact that he doubled down on it, though, like he had a day to kind of think about it, or someone had to have given him a call and said, yo, man, what are you doing? And he's still stuck to it. That's got DFA or trade for a bag of balls written all over it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, somebody had suggested earlier, I could probably find the comment. But since he's worth $10 million, they'll try and trade him first, and they may try and trade him first. But I think that another team who might be looking for a left-handed bat looks at it and goes, yeah, that situation's bad in Philly. We'll just wait because nobody will trade anything for him, and we could probably get him for next to nothing, for league minimum. What's
been your impressions of him being around him for a short amount of time this season? I mean, he came here. There's no real baggage. It's not like, oh, that's Max Kepler, right?
No, he's a very good guy. I think I've talked to him a few times, and I think he's a good talker. I mean, I don't think that he's the sharpest knife in the drawer, let's put it that way. But I mean, he's always willing to talk, and he's willing to give you some thoughts, and that's okay. And he's good. And he seems to have be a liked guy in the clubhouse. It's not like he's off by himself all the time. I mean, he's usually in conversation with those guys in the back corner of the locker room. He's back there with Castellanos and Turner and Harper. He's on that side of the clubhouse. So I think that he's fine in that regard. I don't think he's a troublemaker per se, but you got to wonder what the guy's thinking. And look, I guess he's thinking, I don't want this to be my last year in Major League Baseball. I'm having a terrible year. They're not helping me get a contract next year. I'm probably not going to be back here next year. Like, I guess maybe that stuff is starting to sink in a little bit, and the frustration of that is probably what is fueling what he's saying. But that doesn't make it right. I mean, it just doesn't. And so, like, if I'm the Phillies, I look at it and I go, Max Kepler, mistake. We gave it a shot. It was a mistake. They did it with Whit Merrifield last year, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. It was a mistake. Didn't work out. Loved the guy. They loved Whit Merrifield as a person.
I actually, he just retired, obviously, formally, and there were a bunch of former Phillies. I think it was like Stubbs and Castellanos and Schwarber. I want to say it was like Foul Territory, maybe that podcast. And they did like a quick well wishes thing. And it's all Phillies guys, and they're all like, "Dude, can't wait to play golf," and they're busting his balls and like, man, they really loved Whit Merrifield. They did. Not saying that they don't like Max Kepler, but I don't think that this will have the same profound impact on their emotional connectivity if they DFA or trade or move on from Max Kepler.
Correct.
The thing that kills me about Max Kepler, though, it's like the last 30 days he's hitting 173. Last 15 days, 175. Last 7 days, 143. I mean, the numbers aren't good enough, and it's not like he's hitting right-handed pitching. It's like he's hitting 205 against righties this year. He's 41 for 200 against right-handed pitching. He's got a 380 slug against him and a 312 on-base percentage. it's not like the guy's producing and they're letting him sit there and rot. I think Brandon Marsh has a bigger gripe being platooned right now than Max Kepler does. Anytime that they face a lefty and they're running Johan Rojas out there, if I'm Brandon Marsh, I'm like, hey, very small sample. I think he has like 30 at bats against lefties so far this season, but he's like, I think he's hitting like 260, 750 OPS. Like he's like at least, and he's having great at bats against righties. That I get. Max Kepler, you're not doing the thing that they brought you here to do, and you want to play against lefties as well?
Yeah, I know. But the thing about Marsh is like the ultimate teammate. Like that's what they love about Marsh, is that like he is like so in favor of everybody doing well.
Yesterday he's bunting, moving runners over. They didn't call that. It wasn't from the dugout.
It was his. Yeah, no, Marsh is, I know we killed him earlier this year.
Well, no, I killed him and said it's not good enough. He is not good enough to be the everyday center fielder for a championship team. Stand by it. He's good enough to be on this team. I'd like to see him in a platoon situation playing left field for the Phillies right now, or right field for that matter. He's a useful baseball player.
So let's get to this, because everybody, Chris brought it up about the story in the Inquirer about Justin Crawford, and everybody's been screaming for Crawford. I don't want to disparage a young player, but you got to watch the way the guy plays. Don't just look at his batting average. Like I keep saying it, and listen. I've been telling you all year about the Mets pitching and how it's going to fall apart, right?
Yeah.
So listen to me when I say this too. Justin Crawford very well may be ultimately a very good Major League Baseball player, and I hope he is. Right now, at his tender age, he's hitting so many balls into the ground in AAA. He's getting hits because it's AAA. When you come up to the majors and you got to go against Major League pitching, you're going to hit those balls into the ground and you're going to get thrown out at first base every time. And you don't want more Johan Rojas. Now, I think Crawford is far better than Rojas ultimately, right? But right now, do you want that? And I think that's why the Phillies are being very, very careful with this. Do I think he's probably going to get a call up? I do. I think he's going to get a chance to play a little bit, but I don't think that they are so 100% certain that this is the solution. And I think fans think it's a solution. And it for 2025, I'm not convinced it's a solution. It's something to look at, something to consider, but I don't think it's a solution. But yet, when that happens, if that happens, let's say it happens here in the next couple of weeks, is Brandon Marsh, Otto Kemp your left field platoon then?
Well, I think that Otto Kemp is the left field platoon from the right side for the month of July.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I don't see how, and that's why I think that the Kepler thing might sour sooner than later.
Yeah.
Because we talked a little bit about this on Friday, I believe. I actually think I raised this point. Like, those two players are somewhat redundant. One happens to be younger and better, and under team control beyond this year. So I think that Brandon Marsh certainly should play in any scenario over Max Kepler. Now, the only argument that you can make for Kepler in the short term is that he does have 9 home runs, and on this team that makes you Babe Ruth. Brandon Marsh has not really had the overall power. So do you want to further take out whatever little slug that you have against right-handed pitching and diminish it further? But otherwise, no. I mean, it feels like a no-brainer. Just when you look at the stats, better on base, better batting average. He's a better player, better overall player, better energy.
Yeah.
The whole thing. So, yeah, I mean, but the problem is with Crawford, like, and by the way, just because you hit a lot of balls on the ground doesn't mean that you can't be a good major league hitter. I mean, right now, Yelich, 57.7 is the highest ground ball percentage in major leagues this season. Yandy Diaz is 2. Ellie De La Cruz is 3. William Contreras is 4. The dude out in Oakland, Wilson, is 5. I mean, these are good hitters, a lot of these guys, right? Conversely, scroll down a little further, Alec Boehm's 9th, just for what it's worth. Tatis Jr., 10th. So, like, you can hit the ball on the ground at a high rate, 50% of the time or more, and still be successful Major League Baseball player. And Crawford has elite speed, and he should be able to find his way on base. But you're right. And if you look at his ground ball percentage this season, it's 61%. So that's 3% higher than the highest in the league this year. And it's not against AAA pitching, or it's not against Major League pitching. So I do think that that's problematic. And the other issue is that this team desperately needs slug. Well, of all the things that Justin Crawford does, one of them is not slug. So he's not going to rectify that issue either. I don't know. I just don't think that Justin Crawford is a true difference maker in this lineup. And I don't mean that to say that he can't play. I don't mean that to say that it might not just be refreshing to look at somebody else. You know how ready I am to move on from Johan Rojas in any capacity. So just letting the kid play every day, maybe giving the team a different energy, a different look. He can create some chaos on the bases. Like, I'm for it. I'm not saying don't do it, but I just don't think it's the cure-all that some people seem to think. They're not bringing up Ken Griffey Jr. here.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And that's the part that it's like, I think that sometimes we overreact, right? And I think that that's what it really needs to be. Temper the expectations. If in fact this call-up happens, and I think it's going to happen, I'm not 1,000% it's going to happen, but I think it is. I think he's going to get called up, and Rojas is probably going to go down. The problem is, the other thing you got to wonder about is if they become very, very left-handed, even more so than they already are, right? I mean,
this team needs another left-handed hitter.
Yeah, just what they need is another left-handed hitter. But I do think that you might see something like he comes up, Rojas goes down. Maybe they get rid of Kepler, and
now, to be fair, though, I mean, and again, he's had almost a quarter of the at-bats against lefties that he had against righties this year. But Crawford's hitting .426 against left-handed pitching so far this season. He's hitting .311 against righties. Now, so is he immune to that? Hopefully,
Yeah.
What do you, if I had to kind of paint you into a corner here, like, what is the timeline? If they do it, do you think it's like a August 1 thing? Do you think it's let's see what we have the month of July thing?
I think they might give him a couple weeks in July, right? Come out of the All-Star break, face the red hot Los Angeles Angels, and who are knocking on the door for the playoffs all of a sudden. Which I freaking can't believe that either. That's a stunner of all stunners in baseball. But I like that to me would make the most sense. But I mean, I don't know. Like, things are so bad offensively right now that I could see it happening even sooner too.
Well, let's start here. Is Bryce Harper in the lineup tonight?
My gut says yes.
Okay. I mean, one guy can't make that much of a difference, but he does make a big difference for this team, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Little like life raft here. Like
I don't know. So in other words, what you're saying, where you're going with this is, let's say Harper comes back tonight. Play along. Yeah. He comes back tonight. Maybe their thought process is, let's give it another week with Harper back in the lineup and see how the offense starts to look now that he's back and he's healthy. Before they think,
or do you really want to take like two cables and jumpstart this thing and go, Harper's playing first base. We're putting the kid in center field tonight. Let's go.
Yeah. I don't know.
Let's see. Who do the Padres have going here tonight? Probable pitchers. What does this look like? Let me bring this up. Matt Waldron tonight.
The knuckleballer.
Yeah, this is his first start of the year, I believe. First
knuckleballer's back.
Versus Zach Wheeler. And then it's old friend Nick Pivetta against Chris Sanchez tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then Dylan Cease is having a weird year, Dylan Cease versus Mick Abel on Wednesday.
How weird was that, by the way, Friday night, the Mick Abel thing?
Oh, he warms up and he's ready to go, and then they sit on their hands for 2 hours, and then they opt to protect him. And to be honest with you, on a night where they were facing Bryce Elder, who was that bad, and they scored a ton of runs, I don't know that decision helped them win the game, but I didn't like that matchup for Mick Abel on Friday night. Even though the Braves aren't really having a good year offensively, they've been dreadful, frankly. I didn't like that feeling on Friday. I kind of feel like the Banks insertion right before the game sort of gave the Phillies a little run there to get their feet on the ground offensively and win that game.
You learn something every day, right? In this sport. And there's something I did not know. and you know me, I'm Mr. Scorekeeper. I had no idea that Mick Abel still gets credit for the start in that game.
Yeah. Yep. And if you look at the box score, because somebody was like, well, could they go to Abel after Banks? I'm like, no, he's been used. Like,
yeah, it counts as because he warmed up. It counts as
once it goes in that lineup card's inserted and you have a starting pitcher on it.
Yeah, he's so it was he got the start even though he didn't throw a pitch.
Yeah.
And Tanner Banks there was a relief effort. That was not a opener kind of thing, even though it was.
I mean, this is an interesting series. It's an important series. The Padres, we just talked about this, how crowded this playoff picture is. The Padres are right there. They're not that far behind the Phillies. When you get toward the end of September, these are the series where you take 2 out of 3, create a little extra distance. It goes a long way a couple months from now.
And the tiebreakers, right? Like you always have to consider tiebreakers because there is no game 163 anymore. It's the tiebreak. Like, how did you do in the season series against this team? You have to. These games matter. Like, they matter a lot as far as that's concerned. Another guy we got to talk about in the realm of is it time to get rid of him is Jordan Romano.
I thought you were going to say JT Realmuto.
Well, no, they're not going to get rid of JT Realmuto. You're stuck with JT Realmuto for the rest of the year. I mean, that is what it is. But
I do want to talk about JT for like the first time this season. We don't talk about him at all. So
yeah, we could talk. We could talk about him. But are we in the same boat now with Romano that we are with Kepler? Like, it's time to just say, hey, cut our losses. Wasn't a good signing. Move on.
So his last 7 games, he's got a 5.68 ERA with a 0.95 WHIP. In 6 1/3 innings, he struck out 5, walked 2, allowed 4 hits. One of them was a grand slam, as you know. Jordan Romano's hard to figure out in that, like, do I trust him? No. Do I want him to throw one meaningful pitch in October? No, I don't. And you can sit here and say, like, oh, tough start, and then he figured it out for a month. And in the games where he doesn't get cooked, he's been really good. You know, that's kind of his deal. Like, he's either really good or he's not. The bottom line is the guy has appeared in 33 games and he's got an ERA, it's 7.5, and he's got a WHIP over 1.5. Like, no matter how you slice it, it's not good enough. So I don't really want him to be part of the equation in terms of what my bullpen looks like for meaningful games late in the year. That said, this bullpen stinks. And this bullpen stinks to the degree that I think he's still probably your 3rd best option. Even with everything I just said, in the short term, if you give me the like hierarchy of trust, it's Kerkering, it's Strom, and it's this guy, I think. I mean, Tanner Banks has done a nice job for them, right? Like, he's been situationally pretty good for them. But if it's the 7th inning and it's a 1-run game, I still think he's probably the guy. I don't know. I mean, I think that tells you a lot about the rest of the bullpen. But, I mean, what do you think? I guess what short version is I don't want him on the postseason roster. The immediate version is I don't think you can DFA him.
Yeah, well, so like you said, he's been in 33 games this year. In 24 of them, he's been very good. In 9 of them, he's been lit up. So you're basically like 2 out of 3 chance. Like, it's 67% chance he's going to have a good outing, 33% chance he's going to absolutely implode. Is that good enough? I don't know.
Of course not. I mean, you know, last 30 games, 1.58 WHIP. Last 15 games, 1.58 WHIP. You know, he's actually been a little bit better lately, I guess, until the grand slam the other night. I just, it's not working. Certainly what we can say at this point is that this signing has not fulfilled the role in which they were hoping to fill. You know, like this is not working. It's not good enough. They whiffed. This is a horrible signing. So yeah, but no, I mean, I think it's a situation where you still want the guy. Like, you're like, well, I got to get someone out.
I guess you got to. I guess the answer is you got to keep him for now. But by the end of July, if you do what you need to do, you don't necessarily need.
Well, what I'd like to see, I think, is him be the high upside reclamation project. You know, like where they just use him low leverage and just see what happens. Like, it doesn't hurt to keep him on the roster. You give him opportunities as they come and just see what he does with them. Like, just see what you have. It's like you're
Yeah.
taking a flyer on a bad investment. You've already made the investment. Let's ride it out. But I don't want to ride it out as an 8th inning guy, in the most important of moments. It's a mess, though. It's a mess. I feel bad for the guy. He seems like a good dude.
Oh, he's a great dude. He's so good. Like he is he's like talking to hockey players. Like he is very, very cool guy. Like him a lot as a person. I just wish that he was a better pitcher because he's just not good enough.
No,
not
he's
good
not.
enough.
Well, speaking of not good enough, one of the things that we keep talking about is this team's inability to really slug from the right side. And I didn't really want to pick on him too much early in the year because the sample was just so small. But, the calendar is going to read July 1 tomorrow. And you look at JT Realmuto this season against left-handed pitching, and it's really just hard to believe. He is 10 of 81 this season against lefties. He's hitting 123 with a 174 on-base percentage. Anthony, he's slugging 160 this season against lefties. He has 3 doubles in 81 at-bats against left-handed pitching this season. His OPS is down to 335. 335 wouldn't be a good on-base percentage or slugging percentage in isolation, let alone OPS. Obviously, he's JT Realmuto. He's also hitting 282 this month with no thump, but he's hitting 282. I'm not saying you platoon him. I'm not saying I want to see more Marchand. I'm not saying that you cut DFA him. I'm not saying any of that. They are committed to him. He is the guy. I still think he should be the guy. But dear God, can you please get a hit against a left-handed pitcher?
I've never seen anything like this, Bob. Like usually when you have guys have reverse splits all the time, both hitters and pitchers, but it's never to this extreme. Like if you look at his numbers against right-handers, 294, 365 on base, 441 slug, 806 OPS. It's pretty good.
Pretty good.
It's pretty darn good against right-handers. But to be the complete opposite against the opposite hand, like how can you be that? How can you be that disparate? I don't get it, and it doesn't equate to his historical numbers. It doesn't equate to common sense because he's been better against right-handed pitching for his career. Although some of the knock, some of that that left-handed pitching struggle includes this year, but career OPS 782 against righties, 758 against lefties. It's fairly similar. Right. That's my point. And usually this is why I say it goes against common sense. Usually as you become an older player, right, and you start to lose a little bit at the plate, it's usually that you are struggling against the same hand pitcher and that you could still hit the guy on the opposite side because you can see the ball better coming at you as you get older. So your reaction time is a little bit better coming out. But for him, it's been the opposite. I don't know how to explain it. And I'm not sure that the Phillies do either, because I know that they talked a little bit about him changing his stride against left-handed pitch not having as much of a high leg kick, getting the foot down a little bit faster, maybe being able to see the ball a little bit better, that thing. But it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And it's part of the reason why, and as we talked about on Friday, Houston exploited this by throwing 5 lefties in one game, is one of the reasons that you feel comfortable doing that against the Phillies is because you say, we have completely turned JT Realmuto into a pitcher when he bats. That's what we've turned him into. So you now have that guy can't hit. You have 2 other bench players in the lineup like Buddy Kennedy and Jose Rojas who can't hit against lefties. And the other guys are just not slugging. So, throw lefties against the Phillies. They're not going to hit you. It makes sense now, right?
Sure does. I mean, I think that we'd never talk about him, but he's the biggest culprit in all of this. He is. I mean, it's the guy you're trying to hit in the back end of the middle of your order, and he's giving you. I'd rather have Jake Arrieta up there right now.
Zach Wheeler, right?
Yeah. Another lefty, though, right?
That's right. I forgot. I forgot.
All right, look, I have a homework assignment for you before we do one last thing. On Friday's show, maybe Thursday's show, might be Thursday's show because they're off Thursday, right?
So we might have to talk about this. So they don't play on a Thursday until August 14th. So we might have to think about, instead of doing this on Friday, doing it on Thursday, just because it's an
Yeah.
off day every week, right? Until at least
Well,
middle
certainly
of
this Friday, with it being the 4th of July, I think we'll do Thursday's show. So for Thursday, I want you to tell me, who can the Phillies trade with at the deadline? We talked a little bit about this last week, but I'm really thinking about this now as I look at the postseason picture, right? In the National League, you know that the Rockies, the Pirates, the Nationals, the Marlins are going to sell or will be in position to sell.
Yeah.
The Braves are only a half game in front of the Marlins. Could they sell? I think that it might be time. I think that that's an interesting conversation, but I don't think that that deal is going to happen with the Phillies. And then, it comes down to the Reds here. Like, they've got some life. They're playing pretty good baseball. 4 games over. The pitching's been pretty decent. I don't think that they're selling at the deadline. So it's really the Diamondbacks and the Braves in the National League that you don't know about. And then those other 4 teams. Everyone else is in it. Like, Phillies aren't trading for Rhys Hoskins. The Brewers are 10 games over 500. It's not happening. They're a half game out of the top wild card spot right now. They're 2 games behind the Cubs for the NL Central lead. So that's the National League. And then you hop over to the AL, the White Sox, the Athletics. They're the 2, no doubt about it. Other than that, I guess the Orioles will sell. Maybe the Royals. They're only 4.5 games out of the wild card spot. The Twins, I think, stink, but they're only 3.5 games out. What's Boston going to do? Cleveland's struggling, but they're only 2.5 games out. Like, so many of those teams, I mean, you said it, the Angels. Like, look at all this. The Angels, the Rangers, the Guardians, the Red Sox, and the Twins are all 3. They're all 1.5 games of one another right now. So you have 5 teams within 3.5 games of the final wild card spot. That makes for tough sledding when it comes to do trades.
Yeah, no, it does. It absolutely does. And that's why people keep asking and say, well, so who are they going to trade for? Maybe this guy, maybe this guy. And like, you don't know. Like, first of all, if you look at the teams that are absolutely out of it, and you say, okay, well, who do they have available? Well, every team is going to want that player, right? Because it's a seller's market because there's limited options. And so the prices are going to be outrageous to get those players. So like you look at like Oakland, let's just say Oakland. Let's just say the Athletics want to trade Mason Miller, for example, just picking the name out, right? Well, I would argue that there's probably 10 teams who would want Mason Miller, 12 teams that would want Mason Miller at the deadline. What do you think the price is going to be for Mason Miller? It's going to be astronomical, right? Like, are you willing to, with this team, give up as much as you have to give up to get Mason Miller? Maybe a little bit more so because he's got a little bit of control. He's not a free agent at the end of the year. But like that's what I'm talking about. I think that you really have to wait it out. And when I say wait it out, probably until the week after the All-Star break, which I know is starting to get close to the deadline. But I think that's when you really kind of dive into, okay, who's in, who's out. And I think teams will make a determination at that point. Like, I look at those AL Central teams, and I start to think that they have to come to the realization, even though they're close in the race, is it beneficial for them to stay in?
Yeah, what's the prize if you even get clobbed clubbed in the first round and see you later.
Right. So I look at those teams and I think that's where you might see some players come available. Specifically Cleveland and Minnesota. Kansas City's still a young team, so I don't think that you're looking at Kansas City as much. But I do think that Minnesota and Cleveland could be teams that suddenly now is a guy like Byron Buxton available, right? He's having a great year. Does Minnesota look to cash in on that? And then you sit there and go, well, that's a name I would talk about.
I would do that deal. I know he's falling out of his bed in the morning, but
yeah, but like I'm saying, like does that, you know what I'm saying? Like I look at players like that and I say, okay, but we don't know yet, right? So to speculate on that is hard to do. Would Cleveland move on from Stephen Kwan, who would be a nice fit here, right? Yeah. You're right. Like, I'm saying, like, I don't know. I don't know how they look at it at this point, right? So there are thoughts in there. Baltimore, you mentioned. But here's the thing with Baltimore. They're a young team still. they had a terrible start, but they actually kind of rebounded a little bit, right? And if you squint and look at their schedule and look what you could go, can the Orioles
Just
potentially
feels
get
like
back
every
into
time
this?
they get a little momentum, it's like Zach Eflin is killing them now. He's got an ERA near 6.
Yeah.
What if though you're a young Orioles team, you don't want to totally punt, but you want to get rid of some expiring contracts and you kind of middle it, right? Yeah. Would you be interested if you were the Phillies in acquiring a guy who over his last 15 games is a .55 ERA with in 16 and a third innings has only allowed 8 hits, 1 earned run, 6 walks to 23 strikeouts for a .86 whip?
I think I know who this is. Is this Andrew Kitteridge?
No, it is not.
Who is it?
This would be Sir Anthony Dominguez. Over Sir Anthony Dominguez's last 15 games, he has a 0.55 ERA. He's been awesome. He's been awesome for them. His last 7 games, he hasn't allowed a run. I don't know. He's an unrestricted free agent next season. You're the Orioles. You really need him for the stretch drive? Would you be in for a reunion there?
No. I wouldn't. I know that they love him. I know he would be great in the clubhouse and all this and that. And he'd love to come back here. He loved it here. I wouldn't go down a path of something you've already had and gave up on, because you gave up on him for some reason, right? Like there was something that you looked at and said, yeah, we're willing to say goodbye to that guy.
Yeah. Well, I think at a time it was circumstantial too. Like, what, this bullpen, this bullpen is so deep and so good. Yeah. We don't need him. He's a luxury. It's crazy how things have changed in a year, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Truly crazy. All right, why don't we do one last thing and get out of here?
So I hopped on Oscar Budahen's show last night, Phillies Weekly, and we were talking about a bunch of different things. And one of the things that he brought up on the show, what we talked about was the swing rate, right? We're talking about the Phillies swing rate is down, or was down earlier this year, and now it's creeping back up again. They're now swinging more than league average, whereas earlier they were below league average. Chase rate. I'm sorry, not swing rate, chase rate. And he said that we said, well, he said, guess who is the number 1 team in lowest chase rate? And he said, I was guessing like a bad team. Like I thought that's where he was going. So I guessed like the Washington Nationals. I was wrong. It's New York Yankees, right? And I thought, well, that's interesting, because that's a team that's a little boom or bust, but they don't chase, right? And then I looked at something else a little bit, and there was a great story. I recommend it. Go on to The Athletic, read Ken Rosenthal's story about Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is swinging at more pitches now than he's ever swung at in his life. And he's having a season that so far it's on pace to be historic, right? In a lot of ways. He's swinging at 35.8% of first pitches.
Wow.
That's like Nick Castellanos level, right? Okay. He's swinging at 67.9% of pitches in zone. Okay. His chase rate's 24.5, which is not astronomically high. His overall swing rate is 46.4% of all pitches that he's seeing. Should that be a template for some people? Should teams, when we see the Phillies being uber aggressive and not working pitchers like they have in the past, is that something that we're seeing now? Maybe that they're recognizing when you're facing pitchers who throw 97, 98, 99, best chances just go up there hacking at that stuff and don't get behind in counts.
Yeah, look, I think that we here have made a lot of, well, first of all, say if it's good enough for Aaron Judge, then yeah, it should be good enough for other people. Although Judge is a unique case in that he just does things that other people can't do.
Right.
But I think we've made a lot about chase rate here, about being overly aggressive because of what we have seen from this team in the playoffs at the most important moments. But yeah, I don't have a problem with swinging at the first pitch if it's the right swing and the right pitch. And I don't have a problem with being aggressive. I don't have a problem with even expanding the zone at times. If that's part of what you're going to do, like it's not always like, well, if you're going to have that in your game plan, you're not always going to execute it perfectly. So sometimes you're going to expand when you shouldn't. You can live with that so long as you feel like it's a competitive at bat, so long as you feel like that you can adjust deeper in counts. The problem for the Phillies is that, I mean, I can't get over the end of the Diamondback series in 23. I mean, they were throwing pitches in the opposing batters' boxes, and the Phillies were going after it 1-0, first pitch. I think we make a lot about plate discipline and pitches per plate appearance here because of what we've seen. If it helped the Phillies start hitting home runs, I would say go back to it. I'd rather have the boom or bust offense of the Phillies had last year than the one that they have this year, which is feeble and requires 4 hits to score 2 runs. This offense will not work. The boom or bust thing, people forget, like, yes, they busted and lost to the Astros. They busted and choked the last 2 games to the Diamondbacks. Sure. But it also won them series. Like, they won playoff games. They made runs. You can win doing that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting study in baseball trends. I think you're starting to see it a little bit more. I just think you're going to start. We wanted for so long. We wanted patience at the plate, and I think that you're starting to see. And in the Phillies' cases, it hasn't really worked when they start swinging early. But maybe that's because it's the players. When you look
I'm starting to feel though with the Phillies now that we're the first couple of weeks, we talked about this and how does it translate? How does it kind of shake out? I'm starting to think for the Phillies, it's not so much about pitch selection as it is just about the quality of personnel. I think that's the biggest issue in terms of slug at this point. I just don't think that they have the right horses. And they're just guys that are on their downside. I mean, that's the way that I view it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's I always like to look at stuff like that and say, is it happening around baseball? And you start to ask other guys. And it is.
Do you happen to know real quick, since we're on this conversation, I meant to bring this.
Uh-oh.
I lost you there for a second. Are we back? Okay.
Yeah, we're back. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you if we knew, because it seems like Castellanos is swinging at the first pitch like in a just an astounding rate.
Well, this started happening. This started happening after the benching.
And what do you make of that?
I just think it was him being uber aggressive, trying to do a lot.
Well, I will say this year, on the first pitch, Nick Castellanos is hitting .467 with a 1.292 OPS. So we can sit here and be like, what the hell was that? Maybe take one, but the numbers, I mean, that's by far his most productive count. I mean, by far. 1-0, he's been pretty good too. But I mean, the first pitch, he's done significant damage. I mean, guys are hitting almost 500 against on the first pitch of an at bat. So
as much as we criticize Nick, his OPS is starting to creep up a little bit.
It is. I noticed that. He gets like over 780. Then I'm like, okay, cool. He's getting there.
He's getting there. He's starting to drive the ball a little bit better. He's not as much of a slap hitter as he was earlier in the season. But as we wrap this one up, Bob, I just want to go back to a comment we got first thing this morning when we first started from Arthur QPR. We need shows more frequently, guys. Constantly great stuff. We do 2 shows a week here. I don't know how more frequently.
Yeah. I don't know if I have any more in the tank. I couldn't do it. I like, as much as sometimes I criticize these like radio show hosts in this market. I'm like, I could not do this for 4 hours a day every single day.
Yeah, but
I think that's how you get to. Do you buy into the Phillies? Like,
yeah, I know you get to stupid comments and stupid commentary, but the thing of it is that they have 4 sports to talk about. We're concentrating on one very, very specific team and very specific thing. So I think twice a week is more than enough.
I would get in trouble if I had to react after every single game. I'd be killing guys left and right. Like, I need that night to take it in and process.
It might be fun. Maybe think about it. But anyway, thanks for tuning into another episode of Phightin Words. We always do appreciate you joining us. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, wherever you get your podcast. But we prefer that you check it out here on YouTube. Click the thumbs up, ring the bell. Make sure you never miss a show. I know people watch us on X as well, through my X platform and through the Joy Media on Facebook. We had live with us today at 9 o'clock on a work day. We had almost 1,200 people with us, so that's really kind of cool across all platforms. So thank you. But I will say that if you're listening in the podcast feed and you didn't know we were on YouTube, or you can watch it on YouTube or check it out later on YouTube, please do go to youtube.com/@Phightin Words. For Bob Wankel, I'm Anthony SanFilippo. Oh, prediction. Phillies take 2 out of 3 from the Padres. I picked they win 2 out of 3 from the Padres. Yep. So for Bob, I'm Anthony saying thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on Thursday, maybe this week, for the next episode. Have a great week, everyone. See you later.